Hi, my name is Georgia, and as I've noted many times before, my whole life seems to be woven from contradictions. On the one hand, I live in the center of a huge, bustling city, work as a corporate account manager for a prestigious company, and judging by my salary and the standard of my apartment, everything is going quite well. On the other hand, somewhere deep inside, I still feel like that girl from a small provincial town, where the evenings smell of freshly cut grass and the neighbors know not only each other's names, but also all the family secrets. I'm 32 years old, and I'm used to telling myself that I've achieved more than I could ever dream of. But as soon as I close my eyes and remember my childhood home, a strange, aching feeling appears inside that can neither be explained nor suppressed. When I first managed to afford an apartment in the heart of the city, with windows overlooking the historic streets and the glittering lights of the skyscrapers, it felt like a true victory, especially for a girl raised in a family where every penny mattered. And yet, no matter how hard I tried, my family remained far away. My parents and younger sister, Bella, lived 7 hours away in a neighboring state, and frankly, I visited them far less often than I should have. Bella, who was 24, still lived with her mom and dad in our house, and while many were surprised that a grown woman was still living under her parents' roof, I always understood. Housing prices are simply insane these days, and not everyone can afford their own apartment, especially in a good neighborhood. We kept in touch through phone calls and text messages, and although that seemed enough, I sometimes caught myself thinking a chasm was forming between us. The drives home seemed too long, and I hated planes with all my heart, so I preferred to drive whenever possible. The journey was tiring, but it also gave me time to think about my own things. And then one day, last month, my mother called unexpectedly, as she always did, her voice a little excited. "Georgia, dear, your father will be 60 in 4 weeks, and we want to do something special." 60. I paused, processing the number, and it was as if the realization washed over me that time was slipping away, and I myself was no longer a girl. I suddenly saw my father clearly as he always was, calm, reliable, stubborn in small things, in his old flannel shirt, the one he wore back in my school days, and I felt a little uneasy. "Mom, what are you going to do?" I asked. Her answer was predictable. No restaurants, no fancy celebrations, just the comfort of home, because Dad always preferred to be in his own home, where he felt like a true master. I pondered what to give him, and almost immediately remembered his quiet passion: cigars. It wasn't exactly a lifelong passion, no, more like a small ritual he indulged in on special occasions. So I went to an upscale tobacconist and, after much deliberation, chose a stunning cigar box, handcrafted from mahogany, with gleaming brass corners and a soft felt lining. It wasn't cheap, but deep down I knew he deserved such a gift, and I felt at peace knowing I'd made the right choice. A few days later, Mom called again, and I immediately sensed the slight caution in her voice with which she usually approached requests. "I've been thinking about the party, Georgia. The cooking, the cleaning. It's all too much for me. I'm tired, and it's becoming stressful." I smiled. I knew her hints all too well, even though she never directly asked for anything. "What would you like to do instead?" I asked. "A restaurant downtown is offering catering. Everything will be beautiful and comfortable, but it will cost about $1,800, she said, pretending it was just a suggestion. I took the hint instantly and replied, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll wire the money." The amount was debited that same day, and an hour later, Mom called back, touched and grateful. "You're such a good daughter. Thank you, dear." We agreed that the party would take place on Saturday the 15th, and I immediately cleared my schedule. The following weeks turned into a marathon. I was closing reports, rescheduling meetings, trying to schedule my chores so I could have a long weekend. 2 days before the trip, I texted my mom, "Mom, is Saturday still on? Should I come around noon?" She responded quickly, as if she'd been waiting for my message. "Yes, perfect. We'll be so happy to see you. Dad's been asking about you all week." Those words warmed my heart, and I felt like everything was right. The perfect gift, a ready-made party, and a chance to be with family again. On Friday evening, I packed my bag, checked the car, set my alarm for 6, and went to bed with a pleasant sense of excitement. A 7-hour drive meant I'd be home just in time for lunch, freshening up and maybe even helping with the final preparations. Morning arrived quickly. I woke up just before dawn, drank coffee, and was already standing by the car by 6:30. The drive was surprisingly easy. The traffic outside the city was almost empty. The sun softly goldened the sky, and I turned on my playlist, letting the music accompany my thoughts. I stopped twice for coffee at roadside cafes, smiled at strangers, and found myself feeling good, really good. Ahead of me lay my family, my father with his new decade, my mother with her eternal bustle, and Bella, whom I hadn't seen in far too long. As I approached the neighborhood where I spent my childhood, I felt that special, incomparable warmth begin to spread within me, the kind you always feel when you return to a place where every turn in the road, every shop bench, and even the smells seem painfully familiar, as if they all held a piece of your past and were ready to welcome you back like an old friend. I caught myself recognizing the old signs, the dilapidated bus stop, and the maple alley where Bella and I once collected leaves for school herbariums, and this recognition filled me with a childish joy, as if I were returning to the past. But the closer I got to my parents' house, the more a strange, unsettling feeling grew within me, as if the lines and colors in the picture I'd been painting in my memory had suddenly shifted. When the car stopped in front of the familiar facade, I froze, in no hurry to get out. Something was different here, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The yard felt strange. The grass was cut unusually straight, the bushes were trimmed, and even the porch looked different from what I was used to, as if someone else had touched the house. Maybe Dad has finally gotten around to landscaping and fixing the railings he's been complaining about for so many years, I thought, trying to drown out my growing anxiety. I grabbed my bag and cigar box from the back seat, feeling its weight in my hands, and slowly walked to the front door. When I rang the doorbell, an unfamiliar sound echoed through the house. Not the old, shrill alarm that always irritated Mom, but a different one, melodic and strangely modern. Before I could even process it, I saw the door open, and an unfamiliar man appeared on the threshold. He was probably about 70 years old. His gray hair was neatly combed, he wore thin-framed glasses, and his eyes reflected the same bewilderment that I was probably seeing in mine. "Can I help you?" he asked with cautious politeness, as if he himself didn't understand what was happening. "Excuse me. I'm looking for my parents. This is their house. I'm Georgia." The words tumbled from my lips as I tried to gather my thoughts. A shadow of worry crossed his face. He sighed heavily and said, "I'm afraid there's been a mistake, young lady. I only bought this house 2 weeks ago, and I know nothing about your parents or where they might have gone." The world around me seemed to sway. I stared at him as if he were a ghost, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Excuse me. What did you say?" I asked, even though every word he said had already seared my mind. The man repeated calmly, almost apologetically, "I bought a house from an older couple, and they had a young woman with them. Very nice people, but they seemed to be in a hurry to sell." I felt my hands tremble, and the heavy box of cigars seemed to press into my palm. "Did they say where they were going?" I asked, almost pleading. "No, I'm afraid not." The realtor handled all the paperwork. I just signed the paperwork and moved in. "Are you okay? You look pale." I couldn't even respond. My head was buzzing, as if 100 voices were talking inside it at once, and I just mumbled something incoherent in thanks and practically ran back to the car, feeling as if the ground had fallen out from under my feet. "This is a mistake," I tried to convince myself, reaching for my phone with trembling fingers. But no, I knew this house too well. Its smell, its cracks in the walls, its porch where Bella and I would sit on summer evenings. It was our home, and it couldn't be any other way. I opened my call log and dialed Mom's number, my heart pounding. But all I got was voicemail. What the hell? I cried out loud and immediately tried Dad's number. Voicemail again. Bella. Same result. I called Mom again and again, each time hoping to hear her voice, but with each ring, the panic in my throat tightened. By the 10th ring, I felt like I was about to pass out, and suddenly, after the 11th try, the call was answered. Georgia, why do you keep calling? Mom's voice came over the line, too calm, too casual, even irritated. Mom, what's going on? I'm at your house and some old man lives here who said he bought it from you 2 weeks ago. Where are you? The words burst out of me like a scream. There was a long, painful pause, and only then did Mom say quietly, Oh, right. We sold the house. I froze, incredulous. What? What did you say? Mom, what are you even talking about? Why didn't you tell me anything? I was choking with anger and confusion. It all happened so fast, darling, she continued evenly. Bella met a wonderful man from Europe online. He fell in love with her and invited us to live with him. He has a villa, a vineyard. It's a dream, you know. It was like a punch in the stomach. Europe? A dream? What about Dad's birthday? What about the catering I paid for? I almost screamed, feeling my throat constrict. We're celebrating Dad's birthday here at the villa. It's so much better than home, she replied. I couldn't breathe. Are you crazy? You can't just sell the house and move to another country without telling me. I drove 7 hours to see you. The words burst out of my mouth. Georgia, you need to calm down. We're happy here. Truly happy. And honestly, you'd only interfere, like you always do. Her voice took on a strange coldness. Mom, I've always been nothing but supportive. I screamed into the phone, but she cut me off. Listen, I have to go. We have guests coming. Don't look for us, okay? We're starting a new life. And the line went dead. I sat there staring at the phone as if it were a bomb that had just exploded in my hands, leaving smoke and ash in its wake, and only then did the full horror of what had happened fully sink in. Everything had come crashing down on me at once. The house, the mortgage, the conversations, the promises. 4 years ago, Mom and Dad had called me in tears, desperate, and told me the bank was going to foreclose on their house because they were behind on their payments. I heard my dad's voice tremble as he begged me to help, and Mom sobbed down the line, repeating that it was temporary and that they would pay everything back as soon as things got better. Then, without a second thought, I took over their mortgage, sending the bank $1,200 every month, year after year, for 3 long years. Plus, I immediately covered their late payments to stop the threat of foreclosure. It came to about $60,000 in total, a huge sum. But I did it for them, for our home, for the memories of the childhood we lived within those walls. And then, 6 months ago, we celebrated paying off the mortgage together. I came here especially to raise a glass with my parents and sister. Mom cooked a big dinner, Dad opened a bottle of wine, and we all clinked glasses together, smiling because now the house was officially theirs. They said words of gratitude. Dad even hugged me tightly like he hadn't done in a long time. And I thought back then that this moment was like a new chapter, where everything would be honest and real. And now this very house, which I saved from the bank at the cost of my years and nerves, they sold it, took the money, and moved to Europe with some man I'd never heard of before. I laughed out loud, but it was a bitter, insane laugh, because if I hadn't laughed, I would have simply thrown up on the steering wheel right there in the driveway. It was all pre-planned. The birthday party, those requests for $1,800 for catering. It all turned out to be just bait, a final ploy to squeeze more money out of me before disappearing. After all, they hadn't been here for 2 weeks. They knew I was coming. They knew I trusted them, that I was preparing a gift, that I was driving for 7 hours, thinking I'd be seeing my family and hugging my father on his big day. And the $1,800 hadn't gone on catering at all. I realize that now, more clearly than ever. It was just another way to squeeze money out of me, wrapped in a pretty lie. I tried calling them again and again, but every number they sent me straight to voicemail. Then I realized they'd blocked me. My name had even disappeared from our family chat, where just yesterday we'd been exchanging photos. I checked social media, Facebook, Instagram, and everything had either been deleted or I was blocked. They'd erased me from their lives like an unwanted page, as if I'd never existed. I sat on that same path in front of the house for over an hour, staring helplessly at the walls that no longer belonged to my family, trying to comprehend everything that had happened. A thought flashed through my mind about Aunt Karen, my father's sister, who lived just 20 minutes away. If anyone could know what had really happened, it would be her. I called her, and when I heard her voice, I almost burst into tears. "Karen, it's Georgia," I said. She immediately responded warmly. "Darling, how are you? You're coming into town for Dad's birthday, right?" And then I exhaled. "Aunt Karen, did you know that my parents sold the house and moved to Europe?" There was a deathly silence on the line, a long, heavy vacuum, until she finally said, "What did they do?" "Georgia, what are you even talking about?" I explained everything, about the stranger living in our house, about the call to Mom, about my numbers being blocked. As I spoke, the words came hard, as if each one was a lump in my throat. "Those bastards." Karen finally exhaled. "I can't believe they did this to you, especially after everything you've done for them." I closed my eyes, feeling my strength draining. "I don't know what to do now, Auntie." "I don't even know where to go," I admitted. Karen didn't hesitate for a second. "Come to me right now. You'll stay with me as long as you need, and tomorrow we'll figure out what to do together. You're not alone." For the first time in this entire nightmare, I felt like at least someone in my family cared about me. That night, I slept with her, or rather, I tried to sleep, but sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, the image replayed itself. My parents' laughter at the holiday table, their words of gratitude, and then the cold, "We're starting a new life" on the phone. The lies, the betrayal, the memories of the dozens of checks I'd written to the bank to secure their house. It all played in my head like a broken record. And yet, when I woke up the next morning, something had changed inside me. The pain remained, but it felt different now, not dull and sticky, but sharp, naked, as if it had burned me from the inside, leaving only clarity. Over breakfast, I said to Karen, looking her straight in the eye, "You know what? I'm done with them." They made their choice. They chose to deceive me, squeeze me dry, and throw me away like trash. So I choose too. I choose to never have anything to do with them again. Karen frowned, a flicker of worry in her eyes. "But Georgia, they're still your family." I smiled bitterly. Family doesn't act like that. Family doesn't accept $60,000 from their own daughter, then sell the house she saved and disappear without a word. Family doesn't block your phone number and erase you as if you never existed. I meant it, and the words rang out firmly. And as I drove home that morning down the long road that had led me to hell the day before, I suddenly felt something I hadn't expected at all. Relief, as if a huge, crushing weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I no longer had to worry about my parents' problems. I no longer had to send money. I no longer had to listen to my mother's subtle but always demanding hints for help. I was free. Over the next 2 years, I threw myself into work, as if trying to drown out the noise of the past with endless meetings, new projects, and goals that seemed unattainable, yet which I stubbornly achieved one after another. I was promoted twice, and with each new step up, I felt my self-confidence returning, becoming more than just the woman my parents had cheated on. My salary grew from a decent one to one that allowed me to breathe freely, to stop counting every penny, and to make plans that had previously seemed like luxuries. And do you know what I did with the money that was no longer sinking into the bottomless abyss of someone else's mortgage? I saved it. Every check, every transfer to my account became a brick in a new foundation that I was building just for myself. I started looking at house listings, real houses, with their own walls and yards, not faceless apartments where every neighbor could hear your sigh. I wanted something of my own, a space where my rules were my own, where no one had the right to kick me out or sell me under my nose like they had. I wanted a house that would be a symbol of my strength, my hard-won path. And it took almost a year and a half of searching, doubt, and dozens of options to find it. A small but surprisingly cozy house in a good neighborhood. It wasn't exactly luxurious, but it had a sturdy frame, a spacious green yard, 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and most importantly, it belonged solely to me, without the slightest hint of anyone else's signature on the documents. The day I received the keys was one of the best days of my life. I walked inside, walked through every room, ran my hand along the walls, and felt my heart pounding as loudly as if I'd just run a marathon. This house was mine, and that mine sounded so sweet, so powerful that I almost cried. I deserved it. I paid for it with my work, my patience, my pain, and no one, absolutely no one, could ever take that away from me. Life seemed to begin to unfold in a new way. I allowed myself to date again and soon met a man named Mario, whom I'd met at work. He was a consultant for one of our clients. Mario turned out to be a simple, kind person with whom you didn't have to play guesswork without constantly looking over your shoulder and expecting a stab in the back. We began seeing each other more often, and soon our relationship blossomed into something serious. 6 months flew by in the blink of an eye, and I was beginning to believe that life really could be new, without the lingering shadow of deception. But one day, on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday evening, everything changed. I had just returned home from work, laid out the groceries on the kitchen table, and started making dinner when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I automatically peered through the peephole, and my blood ran cold. Mom, Dad, and Bella were standing on my porch. They looked terrible, exhausted, aged, with worn suitcases at their feet. I froze, looking at them through the tiny glass, and for a full minute I couldn't move. Part of me wanted to just turn off the light, pretend I wasn't home, but I knew it was pointless. They had seen my car in the driveway. Finally, I opened the door, but left the chain unfastened. "How did you find my address?" I asked dryly through the crack. Mom tried to smile, but she looked so pitiful that even the smile turned into a grimace. "We asked around. Friends, relatives. People say, well, you know, what do you want?" My voice was cold, but Mom suddenly stepped forward, squeezed past the chain, and stumbled into the house, immediately bursting into tears. "Georgia, we're so sorry," she sobbed. "We made a terrible mistake." That man, he turned out to be a con man. He deceived us. He took everything. I closed the door and crossed my arms. "Go away." Dad stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Please, just listen. That villa, the vineyard, none of it was his. He was just renting it. For 3 years, he squeezed money out of us, saying he needed it for taxes, for the business, for the property. We gave him everything we got from the sale of the house." Bella finally raised her head, her face drawn, her eyes filled with weariness. "He said he loved me, that we were getting married. And then one day we came home, and he was simply gone. Not him, not our things." Mom nodded, wiping her nose with a napkin. "Yes, that's right. We have nothing left, Georgia. We barely even scraped together tickets. We have nowhere else to go." I snorted. "So you decided to just show up and move in with me?" Dad straightened up, trying to regain some semblance of authority. "You're our daughter. We're family. We'll live here until we get on our feet." I laughed, loudly and bitterly, because I couldn't help it. "Are you serious? After what you did? After you stole $60,000 from me and disappeared like thieves in the night?" Mom threw up her hands. "We didn't steal anything. It was a loan." I screamed, unable to contain it any longer. "Nonsense! You knew perfectly well you never intended to pay them back, and then you sold the house I was saving and took all the money." They all started talking at once, justifying themselves, pleading, trying to evoke pity, making me feel guilty. It was all painfully familiar, an old family trick. I stepped to the door, flung it wide open, and pointed, "Get out now." "Georgia, please," Mom stammered. "Get out of my house or I'll call the police." My words had the effect. They grabbed their suitcases and trudged toward the exit. Dad, passing me, said, You can't just abandon your family. I looked him in the eye and replied coldly, I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just learning from the best. I slammed the door and locked it immediately, then went to the window and watched them walk down my street, lugging their suitcases, lost and pathetic. And I felt nothing. No guilt, no regret, no sadness. Only the empty relief that they were out of my life again. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't the end. People like them never leave forever, especially when they're driven to despair. So I did what any smart person would do. I spent the rest of that night online, researching security companies, comparing rates, reading reviews, and imagining how my home would now be better protected than a fortress. The next morning, specialists were on the doorstep and I didn't skimp. I ordered the full package. Motion detectors, door alarms, window sensors, high-definition cameras covering every corner of my property, even the darkest crevice in the yard. When they installed everything, I was able to breathe a sigh of relief for the first time in a long time, though the anxiety still lingered. For the next few weeks, my phone was literally ringing off the hook. The numbers kept changing, but the voices were always the same. My mother was crying and pleading, reminding me of a child who had lost a toy, but her words sounded strained, as if she were rehearsing pity. Dad used a bullying tone, speaking authoritatively, demanding that I do the right thing, as if everything that was happening were some kind of stupid mistake I had to correct. Bella sobbed, swearing she'd learned her lesson, that she realized how wrong she'd been, but I heard the same old manipulation in her voice, and each time I hung up, not giving them a second of my time. One day, Aunt Karen called. "Georgia," she said excitedly, "your parents came to my house last night." I just smiled bitterly. "Let me guess, they wanted to stay with you." "Yes," Karen admitted, but I told them, "No, of course not." I told them that what they did to you was unforgivable and that they needed to deal with their own problems. I felt grateful and said firmly, "Good job, Karen. Just don't give in to pity." But she continued hesitantly, "Georgia, they looked really bad, like they were sleeping in a car or somewhere on the street. Part of me feels terrible." I cut her off abruptly. "Don't. They made their choice. They burned their bridges behind them, and now this is the aftermath." Karen nodded in agreement. "I know you're right. It's just hard to see a family spiral into such a mess." I replied that it wasn't fate. It was the result of their greed, lies, and theft. After about 2 months of constant calls and harassment, everything finally died down. The numbers no longer appeared on my screen, my email was silent, and social media stopped sending alarming notifications. I decided they had either given up or found another victim. And either way, both options were fine for me. Meanwhile, my relationship with Mario was becoming increasingly serious. He started staying over on weekends, and soon we were discussing the possibility of him moving in permanently. He knew part of the story about my parents, but I never told him the whole story. Some things sounded so crazy that it was hard to believe unless you'd experienced them firsthand. At the time, I had an important business trip looming, a presentation at a regional office 3 states away. The trip was scheduled for 4 days. Departure on Monday, presentation on Tuesday, meetings on Wednesday and Thursday, and return on Thursday evening. Everything went perfectly. My presentation speech was a hit, my boss was already talking about another promotion, and I felt like a winner as I flew home on Thursday evening. But as soon as the plane landed and I turned on my phone, my world turned upside down again. The screen showed 15 missed calls and a flurry of messages. Most of them were from my security company, and they all began the same way. Urgent. Motion detected. Burglar attempt detected. Authorities called. Intruders have fled. Call immediately. My heart pounded so loudly I almost dropped the phone. While I waited for my luggage, I dialed security. "Miss, we've been trying to contact you," the operator said. "I was on the plane." "What happened?" I managed to squeeze out. "Around 2:30 a.m., we detected a break-in attempt on your property. 3 people tried to get in through the back door. The alarm went off, they got scared, and fled before the police arrived." I swallowed. Did you catch them on camera? Yes, ma'am. Crystal clear footage. The police have copies. I felt sick, but I wasn't surprised. I knew exactly who those three were. When I returned home around midnight, there were clear signs of forced entry at the back door, scratches on the lock, splintered wood in the door frame. And the thought burned me cold. If it hadn't been for that system, if I hadn't decided then to invest every penny into security, they would have gotten in. And who knows how it all would have ended. The next morning, I called the police to formally obtain a copy of the incident report, and Officer Colombo came to my house with a tablet containing the footage they'd seized from my cameras. He played the video, and there it was, clear as day. Mom, Dad, and Bella creeping through my yard in the dead of night at 2:30 a.m., like common thieves, like people without a conscience. Mom held a flashlight, her thin shoulders shaking but her stride confident. Dad fumbled with my back door, trying to pry the lock with what looked like a crowbar, and Bella stood a little distance away, looking around like an inexperienced accomplice assigned to watch. "Do you know these people?" Officer Colombo asked, his gaze fixed on the screen. "Unfortunately, yes," I replied, feeling a chill rise in my chest. "They're my parents and sister." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Your family tried to break into your home?" I nodded. "It's a long story, officer, but yes. And I want to press charges." Before he could answer, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but as soon as I picked it up, my mother's voice came over the speaker. Hoarse, exhausted, but still tense. "Georgia, please don't hang up." The officer gestured for me to continue the conversation and then pressed record. "What do you want, Mom?" I asked. "I know you're angry about last night, but we were desperate," she rambled on. "We've been sleeping in the car for weeks. It's getting cold. We just needed—" "You just needed to break into my house like criminals?" I interrupted. "We're not criminals. We're your family," she pleaded. "Criminals break into people's homes. That's what you did, and I'm filming you." There was a long pause, and then Mom snapped, "You can't give this video to the police. We'll go to jail." I chuckled coldly. "Actually, Mom, there's a police officer standing next to me right now. He's already watched the footage, and we're pressing charges." She burst into tears. "Georgia, you can't do this to us. We're your parents." "You stopped being my parents the day you stole from me and disappeared," I replied, feeling my voice harden like stone. "Now you're just three strangers who committed a crime on my property." "We'll leave you alone," she begged. "Just don't sue." "It's too late." "You should have considered the consequences before deciding to become burglars. Goodbye, Mom." I hung up and looked at Officer Colombo. "I'd also like to get a restraining order." He nodded. "I think that's a smart move." Within a week, everything was approved. A minimum distance of 500 feet, no contact, any violation would result in immediate arrest. 2 years have passed since then. My life has changed beyond recognition. Mario and I are now engaged, and we're planning a small but very warm wedding next spring. We're both moving forward successfully in our work, and in the evenings we increasingly discuss whether it's time to get a dog so that we can have another voice in our home, a joyful, devoted, genuine one. Honestly, I have no idea what happened to my parents and Bella after their arrest. Perhaps they really did serve time, then got out and are now trying to start over somewhere. But I don't care. Mario now knows the whole truth. At first, he couldn't believe that loved ones could treat their child so treacherously. But when he saw the police reports and the footage from my cameras, he just shook his head and said, "I'm proud of you, Georgia. You didn't let them break you and learn to protect yourself." My security system still works, not because I'm waiting for them to return, but because I now value the sense of control and peace it provides. Sometimes people ask me if I miss my family or if I ever think about reconnecting. My answer is always the same. No, you can't miss people who were never truly there. And you can't reach out to those who only seek to snatch from you what you worked so hard to build. Today, I'm living my best life. I have a house that I chose and bought myself, a brilliant career, a man who respects and values me, a future that is entirely my own. In my world, there's no more drama, No more manipulation, no more tears shed for profit, and no more nightly visits from thieves hiding behind the word family. Some may think me cold and heartless for cutting off the past completely, but those people have never experienced how those who called themselves my loved ones stole $60,000 from me and then tried to force their way into my home.